victory. But what we're going to start with today is the latest situation from Gaza and indeed the killing of several Al Jazeera journalists by the IDF, for which we will go straight to Patrick Henningsen. Patrick.
Yeah, this is a very important story. Certainly, it's nothing new. We've been watching journalists being killed in Gaza for the last almost going on 2 years now. It won't be long till October 2025 rolls around. But just to look at the Al Jazeera reportage on this, obviously, we're talking about their journalists, their media team members here. Anas al-Sharif, very highly regarded, award-winning journalist, was killed, as well as, I think in total, technically 5 journalists and 2 other people were killed in this strike. They were in a tent set up outside Al-Shifa Hospital, which had already been bombed and occupied and attacked by the Israelis numerous times since October 7th. And there's something about this story that has really captured, I think, the attention of people in the West as public opinion is already shifting against Israel, where the Western mainstream is starting to acknowledge that there's something going on here that is historic and needs to be brought to an end as quickly as possible. We're talking about the violence, the killing, and what can only be described, according to international courts of justice and others, as a genocide. But here's a video posted by Anas and his team just before, just hours or days before they were killed by the Israelis in this strike. But we'll roll this video and listen to what he says.
إن شاء الله تعالى الدقائق الأخيرة وندخل في تنفيذ وقف إطلاق النار. تحياتي لكل الزملاء اللي رفضوا يطلعوا من شمال غزة ونقلوا الرسالة ونقلوا الصورة في ظل المعاناة وفي ظل الاستهدافات. تحيات يا شباب. تحيات. نورين. خذ
الله يعطيهم العافية الشباب.
في شمال عظيم جدا.
Now, it may have been an older video previously around the time of the alleged short-lived ceasefire, but they're clearly marked as press. And what we're seeing in the reporting now, and we'll show you evidence to that effect, that they were targeted. And there were warnings from the Committee to Protect Journalists, as well as from other organizations, including the UN's own rapporteur on this particular issue. So there were multiple Reporters Without Borders, other organizations, that the Israelis were running a smear campaign against Anas, branding him as a Hamas journalist, and so forth. So they're basically justifying the killing of this journalist. Now let's look at the New York Times coverage on this, and this is important to point out how they framed this here. And if we look at what to know about Al Jazeera, the broadcaster targeted by Israel, and if we just look at the author on this. And this isn't just in this case. This is really for the New York Times across the board. Efrat Livni cut her teeth with the Jerusalem Report, an absolute partisan on this issue. And how she's framing it is basically Al Jazeera is having to defend themselves in the opening paragraphs of this report. Al Jazeera said the strike killed 5 of its journalists and denied Israeli claims that its reporters have ties to Hamas. And she goes on to basically, it's almost like has to make the case to defend. Al Jazeera needs to vindicate itself and prove that it's not, these reporters aren't terrorists or affiliated with terrorists. It's unbelievable. And we'll show you what happens when you put the shoe on the other foot. But here's the numbers. And if you look at this, Israel's killing more journalists than any time ever in history. This is from Brown University, Ivy League school in the United States. Look at all those wars. First, from the left-hand side, World War I and II, I think less than 100 journalists. Korean War, 1950 to 53, or less than 30. Vietnam, slightly more, 60, 70. Then Yugoslavia, a little bit less, 40 something. Afghanistan, up towards 70, you could say. Ukraine, minuscule there, less than 30. And then we have Gaza, 2023 to 2025, 238 plus. That doesn't count cameramen, in some cases, drivers, people who are in support teams to the journalists. And mind you, no Western journalists are allowed to report in there. So what's actually going on here? Israel is preparing a ground invasion into Gaza. And they do not want anybody documenting what is about to happen. But this has been the policy straight through. They don't even let their own journalists in there, by the way. And so now they're killing all of the stringers that work for global mainstream media, as they have with UN workers and so forth. So that seems to be what the policy is here. Now let's look at this piece by Jonathan Cook, and this is just a stunning piece of journalism by Jonathan, who we've remarked before, award-winning journalist. Okay, the BBC helped kill Anas al-Sharif. Its reporting will kill more journalists. And the point here, let's look at what's said here by the BBC. Okay, this is what they're saying. They're positing in their report. There's a question of proportionality, says the Beep. Is it justified to kill 5 journalists when you were only targeting 1? Think about that for a minute. The way this is being framed is so insidious by the BBC. And here's what Jonathan Cook says in his analysis. This is just a brilliant article, by the way, and I encourage everybody to go read it. But he said, imagine that Israel finally allows Western journalists into Gaza after blocking their entry for nearly 2 years. A team of 5 familiar BBC faces covering the region set up shop in Gaza and work out of an improvised studio inside the enclave, like a tent at Al-Shifa Hospital in this case. And he goes on. And then news breaks that their studio had been hit by an Israeli strike, and all 5 killed: Jeremy Bowen, Lisa Doucette, Yolande Knell, Lucy Williamson, and John Donison, the author of this particular piece that Cook is critiquing. Now, just imagine the uproar. What would be the reaction from the West? And here's what the reaction would be. So it's Jonathan Cook saying, in short, the British government and a servile BBC that regurgitates its positions have the blood of al-Sharif and Gaza's other journalists directly on their hands. They helped kill him. And in reporting his murder, they are ensuring that more journalists in Gaza will be murdered in the days, weeks, and months to come. And the analysis goes on to just show how insidious this terrorist label can be, that's just applied so arbitrarily by Israel and by extension by the British and the US and European governments to basically justify killing pretty much anybody that is insinuated as being connected to Hamas. You have to remember, Hamas is the elected government. They're in charge of the administration of Gaza from the beginning of this crisis. So anybody that used to be a press officer for the Hamas government prior to October 7th, okay, and he makes the argument, this would be no different if Britain is implicated in war crimes in assisting Israel in the genocide, then all the BBC people that work for a state broadcaster for a government that's implicated in a major war crime, then what are they at that point? Are they terrorists as well? Or the BBC, could somebody say, well, they're linked to the British government, and British government's guilty of genocide, ergo the journalists are, fair game. That's the argument Cook's making. And it's quite a shocking and compelling argument. And again, just to go back to the article here, go to Jonathan Cook's Substack and do subscribe. I'm a subscriber to Jonathan, and read this. This is just an amazing piece. He does amazing work, but this is just something else. Now look at this. Okay, this is the National in Scotland. UK spy plane over Gaza as Israel killed journalists. So the implication here is the UK government involved in their overflights, which take off from RAF Akrotiri in Cyprus, and then supplying all the information and data over to Israel. We know about the Lavender AI applications and how they're used to track and target individuals, including journalists. Is that what happened here? Well, here's Matt Kennard, and he's been reporting on this and done excellent work on this particular subject here on X. UK government never wanted you to see this. They spent 20 months concealing flight paths of RAF spy missions over Gaza on behalf of Israel. But they recently contracted it out to a US company. The new pilot soon forgot to turn off his transponder. The evidence for a war crimes trial right here. And that's it, folks. I mean, there's enough evidence here to lodge a serious legal challenge on this basis to all these governments, particularly the U.S. and the U.K. On this issue, and we've compiled a lot of the documentation of this, including PDF documents and so forth. So if you want to deep dive, go to 21stcenturywire.com. Anas al-Sharif, unyielding voice for Palestinian justice, will not be silenced, and that's up there on our website. So I do encourage people to go there for more details. And I hope this is one of those stories that's going to change people's attitudes on this who've been on the fence on this issue. Let's hope so.
Yeah, Patrick, thank you for that. And I just want to briefly demonstrate the sheer hypocrisy of the UK regime, particularly if, as you suggest, and as others are suggesting, they were directly involved in this operation. So let me just bring this on screen. Because when it was set up by a previous, it was set up by a previous regime. Let's go back. The National Committees for the Safety of Journalists. Sorry, I'm getting this wrong at the moment. Here we go. The National Committee for the Safety of Journalists, I should say, still exists. It's currently headed up by Jess Phillips, MP, Minister for Safeguarding and Violence Against Women and Girls in the Home Office. And yes, okay, I hear you all saying, but that's only for the protection of UK journalists. And there's a certain amount of hypocrisy in that in itself. But if we head over here, you got a sneak preview of it to the House of Lords Library. We can talk about the Media Freedom Coalition, also set up by the UK government. And it is a group of 51 countries that the British regime led, which advocates for media freedom, the safety of journalists, and specifically holding those who harm journalists to account. So is the UK going to hold itself to account here? I don't think so. Now, Israel's not part of the Media Freedom Coalition, as we might expect, but the UK is absolutely still a member. So, Patrick, very briefly, I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, the Media Freedom Coalition, I think this was promoted by, at the time, Lord Ahmed, if I'm not mistaken, a few years ago, Amal Clooney. This is when Jeremy Hunt, I believe, was
yes,
the secretary at the time. And they did this while Julian Assange was incarcerated in a maximum security prison, Belmarsh. One of the world's most decorated journalists was being held without any charge, basically without any legal due process, arbitrarily, and eventually got out. But that's when they launched that. As they locked up Assange, they launched the Media Freedom Campaign. And I spoke about that publicly at the time, and others did as well, just to point out the sheer hypocrisy of it. Talk about a double standard. It's not even worth commenting on. So, I mean, you just have to look at the record of these governments who are pushing these. These are just public relations, things to put out to make it look like they're friendly to the press. But at the end of the day, when it comes to national security and hardcore geopolitics, all this stuff goes right out the window.
Yeah, and Charles, anybody that's in the British media that thinks that if they're abroad they're in any way safe, they're naive.
They are, although I think another thing that's worth pointing out, following on from what Jonathan Cook's been saying, which is absolutely right to bring out, is the incredible inconsistency with what was happening in Syria, in particular Jeremy Bowen's sort of glad-handing of Jalani al-Sharaa, who, of course, until that point was reckoned to be the head of a terrorist organisation. And yet the BBC were there actively promoting him. So that the inconsistencies and the hypocrisy just is really boundless. But as you say, Patrick, one would hope it would be a turning point. But I mean, how many times have we said that before?
Indeed.
Yeah. Now, what we will do is come back to these